ETE Imhotep Senet. Aquas to Jed, Uncle Jaseneb. Dua Henu for tuning in. Um, as we continue with our regularly scheduled program about the evolution of human beings, right? So we touched on a few things last time. I'm going to share my screen here just so you guys can get acquainted. Let's share that big head brother right there. Hey. So remember we left off here last time, right? We covered the period of early hominids, the Australopithecus ramidus, the Australopithecus anamensis, the Australopithecus afarensis. We covered all of these. The Taung child. We covered all of this. Homo erectus. Took us all the way down here to South Africa, didn't it? And Tanzania. And Homo sapiens emerge in tropical Africa. Homo sapiens in Ethiopia emerged. And you remember, none of the emergences that they showed looked human-like. They all look like apes or monkeys in particular. And so then we have to get into part 2 of this, right? Remember, I said we were going to start to get into part 2 of this and where it's going to lead you. Because as you can see from our libido here, we're going to start talking about the koi. This says sign people, but it should say koi. We're going to get into the Quada period, the Pleistocene epoch, last ice age, if you will. We're going to get into your first calendars in the Congo region. I'm even going to throw something extra in there and tell you that the Amduat, which is the afterlife portion in the sky for ancient Egypt, is over the Congo. We'll get into that too. And we'll start to, cover this mystery of what types of evolution are actually healthy. Right? So let's start with one thing, because I want to kind of dispel something. Last time we seen humans in ape form, supposedly. But there are different types of evolution. I said that, right? So we got to look at some of these, because the evolution that they point to would be devolution. If a human is to come from an ape, as opposed to just being created from the same materials of the ape family. Not the supposed sex with the bonobo monk ape with another type of hominid or whatever it was that created the human. And we'll cover that in a second as well. These are some of the factors of evolution. We're going to come back to this. Divergent evolution, convergent evolution, parallel evolution. We're going to cover those, right? And then we're going to start to get in depth a little bit concerning them. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll get into the 2 types of biological evolution. So we're going to cover all of that today, because all of that is necessary for us to delve deep enough into this. We'll talk about Urey and Miller's experimental methods. We're going to cover all of that, right? But right now, this is the question. Is evolutionism racist? Is it racist, right? Is this racist? Is this what we're seeing? Let's talk about Darwin for a minute. Let's go in. It says, few ideas have damaged the entire world more than Darwin's. His idea gave the greatest scientific proof for racism. Descent of a Man. That's the book, right? Some of the statements. Now, see, this is what an apologist would do. An apologist would go and show a relationship that Darwin had with a brother And Darwin is saying, oh, see, this brother's just fine. He's blah, 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 blah. He's this, that. He's a great venerator. We should never think of him as a lower thinker. He says that later. He says that later. It's like a Nazi running up in your face and disrespecting you. You N-word, blah, 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 this, that, the other. And then turning around, as soon as a news camera comes on and says, I may have misspoken. This is a great guy. He's actually, he's not on par with me. I mean, this is a man that can be venerated for other things. It's an apologist. It's an apologist. Let's read some of the things about Darwin and some of the things that he put in Descent of a Man before he started to apologize and make all this other information and what have you. It says, man evolved from apes and continued evolving as various races, with some races more developed than others. So already he puts his foot in his mouth. Some races are more developed than others. So when you start to say stuff like, oh, the human race, that's good thinking. But this is your opposition on the other side. He said races. He said races. And we're going to go back in time through this series because we're going to talk about things like when Herodotus separates the races of men, when the Ramech, the Egyptians, separate the races of men to show you the different cultures that have emerged from man. Since everybody is acting like, oh, we want everyone to love each other. But the problem with black people, you love every goddamn body and no one has loved you back yet. And so you keep getting kicked in your ass about it. Pardon my language. It's about as much cussing as you'll ever hear on this channel anyway. So when this happens, we have to have you start to use this. You have to use this until the other cultures start to respect yours. You have to be aware of the situation that's at hand. And other cultures who are watching this channel, when you start to respect the other cultures around you the same way, because discrimination happens on all levels, then we can get back to the word human. Then we can think as one again. Right now, these are the dissensions that are amongst us, and we're pointing the finger at this one. So it says this. It says the white race was more advanced than those lower organisms. Then he gets particular, doesn't he? He says such as pygmies. Who's a pygmy? Who's a pygmy? Yeah, you know who pygmies are. That's your African brothers. Huh? That's the bushy. That's the cushy. The bushy, the bushmen, if you will. In Africa, as they call them. And he called many non-white humans savage. So it ain't just us. It ain't just us. Low and degraded. This is in the Descent of Man book. So next time, because somebody's going to say, but see, he loved this black dude over here. He see, when the camera's on, he was talking different. But when he wrote his thoughts down, he made this clear. Savage, low, and degraded. Darwin argued against vaccinating lower non-white classes of people against diseases. Why'd he do that? Mr. Stand Up for Darwin's. This is highly injurious to the race of man, he said. But he concluded that we must vaccinate them since we whites are noble. You're looking at a full-blown racist right here, man, and you're trying to make statements to justify him. And you know the time he lived in, so you know how he thought about you. Watch what he says. He says, we must therefore bear the undoubtedly bad effects of the weak surviving and propagating their kind, your kind. Let's go further. Darwin describes native Australians, Mongolians, Africans, Polynesians, and even Eskimos as savages. Savages. See, now today you run around, I'm a savage, yo, I got this burner in, and you think that's cool. But savage, this is how the term was used back then. Because he said it 180 times in the book. Descent and 14 times in The Origin of Species. Those two books, damning for his legacy concerning his supposedly non-racist persona, which he takes on much later. Darwin stresses the vast differences in morals and intellect between the highest men of the highest races and the lowest savages. All you got to do is pick up The Descent of Man. Get the Kindle edition, get the free edition, and look it up for free. What does he say? Of the Indians of Tierra del Fuego, Darwin wrote, I could not have believed how wide was the difference between savage and civilized man. It is greater than between a wild and domesticated animal. Viewing such man, one can hardly make oneself believe that they are fellow creatures and inhabitants of the same world. This is your man's. The Voyage of the Beagle, Charles Darwin, put that statement in. This is your guy. Let's go further. He approved of racial cleansing. So he's all on board for genocide. It is very true what you say about the higher races of men. When high enough, replacing and clearing off the lower races, in 500 years, how the Anglo-Saxon race will have spread and exterminated whole nations. He said he exterminated whole nations. Let me say it again. The Anglo-Saxon will have spread and exterminated whole nations. And in consequence, how much the human race viewed as a unit will have risen in rank by exterminating whole nations. Letter to Charles Kingsley, February 6, 1862. Charles Darwin. This is your man's. This is who y'all keep putting up on the platform. No wonder the pictures of the African, they all look gorilla-like, huh? From a hominid you never found a body for. Let's go further, because it's not just him. It's not just him. You see Augustine Fuentes? Look at him. He look whacked out. Racist, sexist, and white supremacists, some of them academics, use concepts and statements validated by their presence in Descent of a Man as support for erroneous beliefs, and the public accepts much of it uncritically. That means you don't even do your due diligence like we've done for this particular series. You're not even looking at what's happening. You just accept it. Oh, a scientist wrote it. No, stupid. No. That's not how that works. The Descent of Man, 150 years on Augustine Fuentes Science Magazine. Here's your boy Augustine. He says this. He's an evolutionary scientist, number one. He says, Augustine Fuentes is an American primatologist and biological anthropologist at Princeton University, and formerly the chair of the Department of Anthropology at the University of Notre Dame. He writes, Darwin portrayed indigenous people of the Americas and Australia as less than Europeans in capacity and behavior. Peoples of the African continent were consistently referred to as cognitively depauperate, imperfectly developed, less capable, and of a lower rank than other races. As if you didn't come over here to the Americas and cultivate this thing because the Europeans kept dying of disease. As if they didn't use your Native American body to cultivate the land until things happened to you, and that's when they started to import us. As if they didn't try themselves to do the work and began to die of disease and didn't know how to deal with it, and so they had to import slaves, hard labor, captives. This is your man Darwin. Let's see what else Fuentes points out. He says he offered justification of empire and colonialism and genocide through survival of the fittest. In Descent, Darwin identified women as less capable than white men, often akin to the lower races. And this is why you have feminism today. This is why you birth things like feminism. Because of your mans. People will defend him. This is your man. He's an apologist later. but these are his real thoughts. The mainstream scientific community in Europe and the United States accepted Darwin's characterization of non-white groups and used it to promote racial discrimination. This is how racism comes into being in America. In America. So you got to think what you're picking up. You got to think who you're running with before you start running with them. You have to think about what he may say about an interpretation in science before dealing with him. For generations, American public school children learned from their Darwinian biology textbooks that Caucasians are more advanced on the evolutionary ladder than Africans. And all you got to do is go to the .org. Huh? Let's end it with Stephen J. and we'll go elsewhere. We just got to look at who we're dealing with when we talk about this evolutionary ladder. Harvard evolutionist Stephen J. Gould wrote, biological arguments for racism may have been common before 1859, but they increased by orders of magnitude following the acceptance of evolutionary theory. So as you accept this particular evolutionary theory, you become more racist in some situations. You have to understand which evolution actually works or exists, or the possibility is therefore of. If systematic racism exists in the West, it is due to the one man who has given scientific proof of the inequality of races and the superiority of white people, Charles Darwin. So they saying he's given scientific proof that you are a lesser human than a European. And so white people should frown at this. White people should frown at this. Black people, definitely. Africans, definitely. Latinos, definitely. Arabs, definitely. You gotta frown at this. Because you're the savage in that book. Let's go back over to the theory that we're strictly apes. You know, we could be from the ape family, right? Because of the classification. If they're saying anything that stands up on twos, etc., the classification, right? You can go to 8 characteristics, 8 types if you like, right? But we've got to understand what an ape is and, you know, what's not, or a monkey for that instance, right? It says right here, apes are not monkeys. They belong to different branches of the simian infraorder. And there are several physical differences. Apes do not have tails, while most monkeys do. And apes are typically larger than monkeys, according to the Smithsonian National Zoological Park. Apes' noses are short and broad, while monkeys' noses are more snout-like. So apes don't have tails, do they? They don't have tails, do they? Do humans have tails? Humans got tails sometimes. How did that happen? How did that happen, huh? Huh? Humans got tails. Let's see. Let's see. Some of these humans got tails. That's a tail, man. That's a Smurf, B. That's a Smurf. That's a full-blown Smurf, if you didn't know. These are tails. Some humans got tails. See that extra bone? Humans got tails. Apes don't have tails, do they? Some humans got tails. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. and this is not specific of any one culture, though you can find it more in European culture than in most other cultures. Humans have tails. Apes don't. Apes don't. See? These are real tails, yo. Not tall tails, these are real tails. Real tails, right? Now, some will point at things like a horse and a donkey make a mule, right? Which is devolution. So let's look. Because you're saying that the hominid and the ape got together, the bonobon ape and the hominid got together and they made a human. This is the story, right? We're going to go to the different types of evolution, which we'll start to discuss how this is not a necessary factor at all. It's not even necessary. But let's look at one moment of devolution, because that's what this is, and I'll show you why in just a moment. So a jack and a female horse mating produces an animal called a mule. You know what a jack is, right? If you don't, we'll get to it in a minute. While a jenny and a male horse produce a henny. According to the University of Miami, a mating between a zebra and a donkey produces what is called a zebroid, or zonkey, or zedonk. Hybrids are almost always sterile and cannot produce offspring. They can't produce offspring. Likewise, people ask, what two animals make a donkey? Let's look. An equus mulus. A mule is the offspring of a male donkey. Donkey is a jack, and a female horse is a mare. Horses and donkeys are different species. They're what? They're different species with different numbers of chromosomes. Just like you and an ape are different species with differences in your chromosomes. Your chromosomes don't differ much, just like this donkey and this horse don't differ much, but you have a difference in your chromosome number. You're a different species. And so you see crossbreeding. A male donkey jack can be crossed with the female horse to produce a mule. A male horse can be crossed with a female donkey, a jenny, to produce a henny. It is commonly believed that mules are more easily handled and also physically stronger than hennies, making them more desirable for breeders to produce. This would be devolution, showing how you were created, right? But guess what? They're sterile. Horses and donkeys mate to produce mules, which are sterile most of the time. There are occasional exceptions, so they do not violate the particular species definition. The definition referenced in the OP states that individuals of separate species cannot mate and produce fertile offspring. So you couldn't have produced a bunch of humans from this type of mating. Just like you can't produce a bunch of mules from this type of mating. Once you have a mule, if another mule is mating with another mule, it's very difficult for them to have offspring. Right here. A mule is the offspring of a male donkey and a female horse. The mule ends up with 63. Mules can be either male or female, but because of the odd number of chromosomes, they can't reproduce. You got to keep going back to this mare and this jack. Do you think humans could have populated the earth if you had an issue with being sterile all the time? Huh? If you had an issue with being sterile all the time, could you reproduce? No. No. And so there's an issue because, like, we're different species. Our chromosomes are different. We may be made of the same stuff, but we're a different source. We're two different. We're the same source, two different species. So the mating between a bonobo and a this doesn't, a hominid, no, that doesn't make a human. The mating between this hominid and this hominid, these two common ancestors, no. It's not even making sense. Do apes have tails? No. So an ape and some type of monkey species would have had to mate, and no. So there's holes in the science you present. There's holes in it. And we went through all the stuff here, right? I mean, we can go back to some of the comments of the racism that was used with some of this stuff, right? We can go we can go right back into some of the stuff Darwin was saying, and so you can kind of get an understanding of how his evolution, it has holes. So let's look. It says, although the existing races of man differ in many respects, as in color, hair, shape of skull, proportions of the body, yet if their whole organization be taken into consideration, they are found to resemble each other closely in a multitude of points. See, this is when he starts to apologize. Many of these points are so unimportant or of so singular a nature that it is extremely improbable that they should have been independently acquired by aboriginally distinct species or races. Disrespectful. The same remark holds good with equal or greater force with respect to the numerous points of mental similarity between the most distinct races of man. The American Aborigines, Negroes, and Europeans differ as much from each other in mind as any three races that can be named. Yet I was incessantly struck whilst living with the Fuegians on board the Beagle, that's a ship, with the many little traits of character showing how similar the minds were to ours, and so it was with the full-blooded Negro with whom I happened once to be intimate. If that's not a smack in the face out of an apology for why you think we can possibly live on the same lines with each other, I don't know what is. That's the Descent of Man, chapter 5, 6, 7. Right there. This is his so-called, we're cool with black people. That was his statement. A full-blooded Negro. You understand? So if you're a human, you should be upset at listening to Darwin's discussions, man. It's very disrespectful. Very disrespectful. Here he goes again. By the way, a Negro lived in Edinburgh who have traveled with Waterton and gained his livelihood by stuffing birds, which he did excellently. He gave me lessons for payment, and I used often to sit with him, for he was a very pleasant and intelligent man. All of a sudden now, pleasant and intelligent. No one cares about your one black friend. No one cares, man. No one gives a shit about that. Pardon my language. No one cares about that. You understand what you were saying up here about savages and all this other stuff? All you gotta do is read the book. You call them for genocide eventually, all this stupid, man. You're ridiculous. Huh? It's ridiculous. So they're calling the religious creationists the true racists. They were racist too. Most of them were the Christian at that time. Most of them were the Christians at that time. They were racist too. But that doesn't abstain Darwin from anything. That doesn't abstain Darwin for anything. Just because you want to pick out a few spots, no, he's calling cats savages. He's disrespectful as well. And then he created a full-blown science. One pointed and said, God made this above this. This dude is pointing out a full-blown science. They're both dead. They're both dead wrong and disrespectful. He made a science of how the Negro was the savage. The Native American was a savage. The Arab is a savage. You need to be full-blooded white. Whatever that is, if you've ever taken a DNA test, you trace back to Africa regardless. You trace back to Africa regardless. So I'm not even gonna get into all this. We're not even gonna get into all of that. And you can read it right there. Hitler might have been more on point than Darwin. You can just read the statements until we get to a kinder, gentler Darwinism, as they say. Huh? This dude was ridiculous. Huh? Marvin Lebanon. Look at all this stuff, man. All you got to do is look. If you're running this back, all you got to do is go look up these articles. All you got to do is look at the book. The book is free. You find it online. It's very easy. Preservation of the favored races in the struggle for life. Darwin said, looking to the world at no very distant date, what an endless number of lower races will have been eliminated by the higher civilized. Come on, man. You crazy, man. Thomas Huxley. You reading Thomas Huxley book? Huh? Is that what you're doing? Pure blacks of proven natural ability of higher order are in fact rare. The fact that mulattoes, despite their relatively inferior white parentage, are in all countries superior to the blacks is strongly indicative of a marked difference in the average intellectual capacity of the two races. Right there. This is the trend of race, Samuel J. Holmes says. Thomas Huxley. No rational man cognizant of the facts believes that the average Negro is the equal, still less the superior of the white man. Lay sermons, addresses, and reviews. This is the writing of your evolutionists. These are the evolutionists that you tout, their sciences. This is what you consider to be all right. And so we have to go, like I said, no, there's issues here. And we're just pulling it apart little by little, step by step. Step by step. We can go in here and you can find every quote you want in here. From Hitler to Robert E.D. Clark. To Ernest Haeckel. Who you want? You want Joseph Mengele? Who you want, man? Atheism and racism. Social effects of the theory of evolution. Atheism and diversity. Atheism, race, and gender. This is the stuff that you need to comprehend and understand. I understand it already. We know. If you're older, you know. If you're younger, you're new to this, you're getting it from somebody, you're thinking you're running with some new theory. No, see, you need to. No, stop it. Stop it, kid. Urey and Miller. Before we even get into Urey and Miller, we're not going to do that today. But just know, We're going to cover the two types of biological evolution. We'll look at the laterals. We'll cover Urey and Miller. We'll get into the types of evolution: divergent, convergent, and parallel. Parallel occurs when two species evolve independently of each other, maintaining the same level of similarity. Parallel evolution usually occurs between unrelated species that do not occupy the same or similar niches in a given habitat. And this is when you don't need a bonobo to have sex with an ape or anything that doesn't have a tail, and you still end up with some type of tail, because you're two different species. You're two different species, you understand? But they list you as part of the ape family because most of us don't have tails, regardless of your evolution to no longer have a tail. You're two different separate species. You come from the same makeup of resource that created you. Whatever that biological material is that creates a human initially. But you didn't need a hominid to have sex with the whatever it is in order to create a human being. Just so you understand. And so now, we're almost here where we go into this stuff here. We haven't gone into that stuff here yet. Let me go to the chat. Let me see what the chat is talking about. Let me see what y'all talking about. Where my comments at? Let me see. Let me stop sharing for a second. Let's go on. Brother Cosmic Thoughts. I see you, baby. Peace and love to all. Absolutely. So now, when we see this stuff, and we see guys running around talking about, I got to ask you what kind of science you really do, what kind of science you really, How much did you trust what was there? How much did you actually do your research on these types of ideas to get the understanding that they're trying to put forth? Created, not evolved. Exactly. Because there's different types of evolution. They're only presenting one source of evolution to you. They're only presenting one source of evolution to you. And they keep getting hung, and they keep coming back to that same one because they keep talking about a hominid and a bonobo. We don't do that. This is heck in the chair, man. We praise the divine. We understand that the stratosphere brings you into existence. It thinks you into existence because it's alive. Like the earth you live on is alive. Like the universe you come from is alive. This is how you get these things. These particular things decide you need to come into being. This is why you have the same makeup as a sun. This is why you can find all the things that produce a sun in a nebula. And we can keep going. And so when people present evolution to you as the end all end, and they present the type of evolution that has been presented to you, this Darwinistic evolution, there's going to be some issues because there's holes in that theory and there's racism backing it. It's a ploy to push European supremacy. And if, like I said, if you're European and you're watching this, because I know you'll catch it later, just understand that when you see things like this is not a shot at you. This is for you to go do your due diligence to say, hey, this is incorrect. This is wrong. Because when you go take your DNA test, you're going to find like 13% of you comes from Africa. Almost every single time. You're going to find you have a tail. A lot of people do. You're just going to find that. You're going to find certain idiosyncrasies that will tell you that this particular puzzle is incomplete. Questions. You can ask questions. No questions. We're going to sign out. We're going to leave this here on the table. You want to challenge it? Come challenge it. We down. Let's get busy. It don't matter who it is. You know what it is. If you get in the ring, I'm going to tear it down. Now, because we have an issue with being black for some reason. I don't know why. I think when you come over here and you've been demonized, you think that your color is a badge of shame. So I don't know what your issue is right now, right, with the new youth. I know back in the day with us, we didn't have that issue. We love being us. I still love being me. So when it comes to that, and we talk ancient Africa, I'm hearing discussions about, I've been involved in the discussions. We didn't call ourselves black. We're going to cover that as well. I'm going to share my screen again, though. I'm going to knock this out real quick. I'm going to dispel some things real quick, right? If you don't know that ancient Egyptians called themselves black, we're going to go right here. 5th Dynasty. This is a title. Set, right? We won't even get into the title. That's not even important. Messiah, blah, 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 blah. We're not going to get into that. This is what's important. This is a man right here, and this is his name. It says Sa B, and this is him, Kim. Sabi Kim. What is that? This is his title. He's the member of an expedition, controller of officials, Sabi the Black. Huh? His name is Sabi, and he calls himself Black. This is 5th Dynasty. In the Sinai. Small inscription of Djad Kare, or Djad Kara. Still in situ. It's still in situ. And we know Berlin's dictionary messed it up. And we got new scholars that say the same thing. This is back in the day. People hate the old books, but guess what? Them old books still got that good information, huh? Sabi, Sa-B, this is him. This is the determiner. Kim, Sabi Kim. I'm Sabi. I'm black. Here's my title up here. This is me down here, Sabi Kim. Sabi, your brother. You know what it is. What are you talking about? People in ancient times didn't see race. People in ancient times didn't see culture and color. What are you talking about? Herodotus, man, we're gonna do a whole show dedicated to that later, man. Right now I'm sitting back, man. It's no need for me. It's no need for me to get all into that right now. Just trust me. This is an argument well already covered, right? Read Kim. Certainly, again, this is the glyph. This is because they tried to say this was Set. This is not Set. This is a different glyph, which is right here. So they had to correct the encyclopedia because the encyclopedia put it wrong. Why did they put it wrong? Because they didn't want to cover this. They didn't want to cover this. But it says right here, Sa-B Kim. Sabi Kim. And this is him. Member of an expedition, controller of officials, Sabi the Black. This is the primary. This is actually a copy of the primary right there in the picture, but that's how it looks. Just in case you didn't know, man. Stop playing yourselves out here, man. It's looking crazy out here right now. I'm just looking around. I'm like, wow. What are we doing here, huh? And this is for my brothers out there, because our discussions always, you know, it's always a good discussion. But this is what we have to uncover, man. When we get to primary sources from the 5th Dynasty graffiti, Sekhotep and company, and it's a couple of them over there. These are some of the people that was over there, right? Where they find it at. So we got all their titles: sea captain, judge, and scribe. In case you don't think they, floated in boats or anything, he's the sea captain. He's a pilot, overseer of officials, pilot command, second in charge of interpreters. So they're speaking other languages for those who say that there was no communication with Greece, and we spoke all the languages because we helped make damn near all the languages. So of course we had to go talk to other countries. Of course there's interpreters. Second in charge of interpreters: Snajim, Ikwaf, Hemu, Dejati, Ket, and his name is missing here, Ikari, Ankef, Neka Ank, Mary Ra Ank, Sanajim, Ujoy, Ujoy. And that's because you know that W is a U pronouncement from the what? From the Coptic. So it wasn't difficult to know what that is not. And here in particular, it's not Ujai, it's Ujoy. Bek in Ptah. Bek in Ptah. Mary Ra Ankh. Sebek Hotep. Ihi. Shaf. Neka Ankh. Hemi. Ibodu. Kate. Ptah Ma'u. Nefer Ku. Hor. Waji. Anku. Huh? You didn't know? Antiyu, Patashapes, Sabi, and we know he's black. Patawasir, Kunis, Ibodu, Uasha, Neka Ankh, Sebkanai, Shapses, Haru. African names. Another sea captain, a scribe of copper, a judge and a scribe, overseer of officials. You can see second in charge of interpreters, control of officials, control of... Come to these old books, man. Get this information, get this work, man. Sabi Kim, 5th Dynasty. Top it. Can't top that. You can't do nothing with that, man. Can't top that. Can't do nothing with that but respect it, man. With that said, remember who you are and be an Asar, Uncle Jasaneb, Ankwas the Jed, all the good stuff, man. All the good stuff. I'm just walking you through the process so you can dispel some of this craziness. You know, if you come here, you're going to get it right between here, and it's going to be right and exact. Remember who you are and be an Asar, Ankwas the Jet, Uncle Jasaneb. I've been so busy, I don't get a chance to throw these up like I thought I would. Man, and you can see I'm half asleep right now because when I tell you the brother's putting in the hours, the brother's putting in the hours, man. I'm putting in some unreal hours to make stuff happen on a bigger level. We'll see you soon.